I kid you not, some random uncle poked me behind. I thought he was just want to get through, or something. And then I turned around and there he was. And he said, "You young people always look at the top shelf. Lazy. You should look at the bottom shelf."
Welcome to the Stories We Tell Ourselves, a podcast created and hosted by Adrian Lai and Carlson Hugh. Join us in discovering the stories behind our thoughts, actions, and identities as we try to answer not just the whats and hows, but most importantly, the whys in life.
In today's episode, Adrian and I will be talking to Chua on why he quit a very comfortable position at the prestigious Singapore Economic Development Board, his divine intervention at Kinokuniya bookstore, and advice for those currently in a career crossroads.
Welcome back to the Stories We Tell Ourselves podcast. My name is Adrian.
Hello, I'm Carlson.
And today we have the first guest who is definitely a multi-episode, probably the most multi-episode guest that we have on the podcast. His name is Mr. Chua, and he is an ex-government super secret agent for Singapore, who is now farming in Johor Bahru, feeding families like healthy vegetables and fruits and herbs. And he's with us today here. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
Okay, that wasn't the best intro, which I thought I could wing, but clearly, I'm still getting better at this.
Okay. So we'll start off with the intro. So just to give a little bit of background, I know Will as Adrian's cousin. And in fact, that's all I know, Will. But I don't even know the surname until just like 10 seconds ago.
Yeah.
So Mr. Chua, welcome to the show. So what is this super secret agent thing that you were doing for the Singapore government?
Oh, okay. Well, first I have to say it's hard to introduce your own family member. That's probably why Adrian stammered. Yeah, I'll have the same problems introducing him. Why secret agent? I wasn't a secret agent really lah. Okay. It was my second career. I used to be a civil engineer in KL actually, and that didn't really work out. The construction industry didn't really work out for me. So I went to further my studies, and I decided not to do something business related, but something more social. I wanted to do something more social, so I did my master's in international relations and
This is in Singapore.
Public policy in Singapore, and then I went to New York for a year
On scholarship, by the way, double scholarship.
Then, because I was so happy to get out of the construction industry, I was over keen when I was studying my masters, and so I really went and dive deep into every topic there was lah, whether it was international development or Africa or poverty or women's or whatever I could get my hands on. I was very thirsty for something else, and so when time came for me to graduate, I realized that I didn't know what I wanted to do lah, because there's so many things and I was interested in the social, environmental, international development world. So I was a bit lost, and then I had lunch with my ex-professor who happened to be in town. I bought him a Malaysian meal in Boston, and I asked him to help me. And then he said, "Hey, for you indecisive kind of people, there's this. I heard in Singapore government there's this division.
Indecisive kind of people.
They
do all of it.
It's part of the Economic Development Board. Again, a place for people who don't know what to do with their lives. They just go there. But there's this division that looks after all the international NGOs and the World Bank and the UN. And so any international NGO that wants to step foot in Singapore has to meet this office. And so why don't you just try and see whether you can get a job there and get to know all the other NGOs and then figure it out, you know? So I was like, great idea, but I'm not a Singaporean and I wasn't even a PR. And so he said, oh, I heard the current director was a Malaysian, so maybe you have a chance lah. So that was what happened. I wrote in and
When was this?
I graduated in 2011. So I was 32 years old. And I wrote in to him. He replied. He said, why didn't you go through the standard website? And I said, because I'm not a Malaysian, I'm not a Singaporean.
Because I'm not standard, right?
Yeah. And he's like, sure,
Standard Singaporean.
let me put this through to HR. But then he knew my professor, and then sort of like jalan-jalan a bit. And then the HR called me a week later, and I got my job.
Wow.
Yeah, and then not a week lah, very, very soon after, I got my PR.
Right.
Because you join the Singapore government, it's easier. And
Efficient, man.
Yeah, efficient. Then there I was for 3 years, looking after all the international NGOs and trying to figure out whether Singapore was a good place for them to springboard to Asia with their work lah. So Save the Children, WWF, UN, Interpol, World Bank. So encouraging them to set up in Singapore and then linking them to the Singapore landscape.
What's exactly your role there, your day-to-day?
Yeah, so I was managing a team of 8 women. That was already two full-time jobs.
8 full-time jobs, you mean?
8 alpha women that so I was sort of a co-head of the team.
But to be fair, you're not exactly inexperienced like in dealing with alpha women.
Yes.
Our moms are kind of like
so
that.
we come from a very matriarchal family, so it's just my destiny.
It was natural.
surrounded.
Yeah.
Okay.
They come to me. I get attracted to them. It's just it happens like that, even till today. So we were there. I managed a team of 8. We went out and we basically, it's like business development lah. But the in this case, your company is the country of Singapore, and you basically came up with this long-term strategy. So there's a little bit of management consultancy where you come up with like 10-year plans of how to make Singapore the center of non-profit and development for Asia. So you come up with a strategy, you knock on the doors of all these big organizations. If you need to ask a minister to help you open a door, you do, because you have access to all the ministries. So like when we go to the United Nations, we will get the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to help. If we go to the UK, we'll get anybody that the Singapore government has in the UK to help. The office, the diplomatic officers and stuff like that. So we go and we meet the leaders, and then we understand what their plans are for Asia, and then we try and sell Singapore and say, hey, Singapore is a good place for you lah. And then behind it is you try to also sell it inside to the government. So you try and figure out the reasons why WWF should be in Singapore, right? And mainly is at that time it was to create meaningful jobs for Singaporeans, because they banking, factories, but no non-profit jobs, right? So to create meaningful jobs in Singapore.
That's interesting.
But also to, like for example, Singapore had a haze problem with Indonesia.
Right.
So any NGOs that can help with that,
Right.
will be interesting to Singapore, right? Or Ministry of Foreign Affairs will have a issue with Singapore being a small island development state and not having to defend as a small island defend itself against all these global security issues. So like Interpol, for example, would be very interesting to be in Singapore. It will make Singapore a bit more indispensable.
Yeah.
If you have Interpol there in Singapore, right? So all these strategic considerations. So we take all of that into account. We come up with like a strategy, and then the 8 of us, we will just go out there and make friends and wine and dine and chat with all these.
So that's the purpose of the job.
Yes.
Wine and dine and seduce and hook them in, bait
Hook them in,
lock them down.
Show them how wonderful Singapore is. And then one day we'll get a call, we're like, okay, I think we're thinking of moving our office to Singapore, and then we'll set them up properly, make sure they have the right office space, hire the right people.
Okay, was there a special strategy in the wining and dining? Like what did you learn from this job, right?
Yeah.
That would be like useful lah, some kind of secret superpower that you guys have been using for for attracting all these NGOs?
It's a very good question, right? I mean, there is the traditional Singapore way of doing it, which is Singapore, which the Economic Development Board has done it for many years, and really the secret there is super long term and relationship building. So like for example, the Shell and ExxonMobil, they have been in Singapore for like 50 years, 60 years. There is a record of every single meeting that Shell has had with the Singapore government.
Right.
And so anybody that takes over the Shell relationship has 60 years of history and 60 years of talking points and 60 to call back on. So it's really that kind of like, that secret is really to really get personal with all the leaders of the organization, match them with the right leaders in the Singapore government, same seniority, and then to really continue that record keeping and that relationship building, and talk about everything from personal to work to life to how many children, how many wives, how many, and really have that data, and then if you extrapolate that over 50 years, you're like best friends, you're even better friends with the guy. Where even if he moves from Shell to ExxonMobil and all, you know where he's going. You're better friends than him, than his friends,
Right.
So that's probably I would say the secret sauce of the Singapore sort of EDB. But then the funny thing was, it didn't really, not all of the techniques worked for the non-profit world. Because
why not?
Because we were meeting a bunch of bird watchers and ecologists, elephant specialists, some secret police, Interpol guys, they were all very altruistic and idealistic people. So we realized that it was, we had to, they were very sensitive to transactional and fakeness.
Understand.
And so our team initially was made up of more sort of economic development kind of guys. We saw it more like a job. But then eventually we built a team that was really passionate about the different causes. So we were we like to call ourselves the conscience of EDB. Okay. Our division was like the conscience.
The part that gives soul to EDB.
Because we didn't have like investment targets or stuff like that. But what we had was, we wanted to bring in meaningful organizations. So when
was there a way that you define meaningful?
Well, it was more like we did not, like when we spoke to the organizations, we did not tell them you have to invest X $million, create 50 jobs. Okay. For us, it was more like, what are you really going to do here? How are you going to connect with the ecosystem in Singapore, like the universities, and then the kinds of jobs that you're doing, the expertise that you're doing. So it's that kind of like the deeper dive than just numbers. So
more why than
more why.
So I mean, back to the wine and dining. So what was the wine and dining strategy for this group of people?
Yeah. So for this group of people, it would have been, at least our team, we had to really understand what they were fighting for, and we really evolved to really believe in that too. So so like for example, when I meet WWF, this t-shirt I'm wearing, I found myself, our team researching and reading about climate change, and that's where the passion for the environment today, I think that was the seed, that was where it came from, because I was meeting all these people who devoted their entire lives to fighting climate change, even back then. And so slowly when you meet them, you start to feel that you really have you really make headway into the relationship when you really understand what they're doing and you really listen to them. So a lot of we would have instead of 1 hour lunch meetings, we would have 2.5 hour chats with them, and then we would go and visit them in their office, sit down, and then when we go, let's say we meet the CEO or Director General of WWF, sometimes it's better not to bring your chairman or your managing director. Because they are not that kind of people. They don't like seniority. They don't like to be that. They want to be real.
The name dropping.
So they rather a manager like me go and sit down and we'll spend 2 hours just talking about like their view, and they will have very frank opinions of Singapore, and we would be prepared to face those frank opinions, that we are just a transactional city. It's all about business, what can we give to you, kind of thing. So our team, I mean, till today we have a WhatsApp group. We call it the best team ever. And our old team is still in touch. And
you mean the 8 dragon ladies?
Yeah, and they are all in different parts of some of them are still there, and they are senior. Wow. Some of them have moved out and worked for other things, but we still have a WhatsApp group, and we always say, those were the days, when we were together, and we were. It's interesting because when you go into the why with them, when you go back and you face your own company, your own boss, you feel that too, and you start becoming a little bit like the real conscience of EDB. Like we were going up in front of all the directors, talking about like meaning, like Singapore should play a part in climate change. We should play a part in save the children. We should, not because it's not going to give us $1 billion in investments, but look, it's we're playing a part in helping them help the children in Asia better. Like, I mean, come on, it's great, right? So So while I still was confused after 3 years working there, what cause I felt for, but there was a lot more depth, like you could really appreciate, but you could also see the struggles. A lot of these organizations, they were just raising money for their own salaries because they were just big.
You just had to sustain
big machinery to sustain. So it was really a wonderful time.
What areas were you much clearer in terms of your search for clarity, right? So when you joined the Economic Development Board, I mean, after 3 years there, what areas you thought you had a little bit more clarity on?
I mean, it was really a 3 years of I would call it a slow awakening, because I came from the private sector, and there I was thrown into I would call it, even till today, I appreciate it as the most dynamic government agency in the world. And so you had this strong appreciation for good government work, so public service. At the same time, you were in a very experimental division, looking at all the social and environmental organizations in the world. So in 3 years, I went from a very superficial understanding of how government works, and a very superficial understanding of, very idealistic understanding of how non-profits work, to I would say very realistic experience of when you serve a country, when you serve public office or when you are in public service, the kind of, not just for example, bureaucracy. It's very easy for us in our minds to say, bureaucracy, it's all bureaucracy, red tape is all crap. But when you're in it and you see this really dynamic government agency trying to peel away all the bureaucracy to make it easier for Singapore to do business, but still having that responsibility of public money and public image, and painfully keeping the bureaucracy there. Just if not, that everything will unravel, corruption and all that. When you can really appreciate that minimalist bureaucracy, that the economic boards have, right? And so you get. So for me, it was very, very clear what good government was coming out of that role. Then it was also very clear for me, Singapore's story. I got a very deep appreciation because the Economic Development Board was formed before Singapore became independent. So it literally was the agency that planned and helped Singapore survive that leaving the federation and having no water, no resources. That sense of desperation and was built into the culture of the EDB, and then the EDB having gathering all the the greatest, smartest talent that they can find, and coming up with something that can really make Singapore survive. And even though Singapore is so prosperous, this is just so many years ago when I was there, you could still feel that sense of survival. I know that strong culture of we have to keep going. So I could see that, and of course that didn't sit well with my spiritual pursuits, and that's why I left.
What didn't sit well?
Well, what didn't sit well was, again, that the fact that I was in a division that wasn't economic, in the Economic Development Board, and then setting out to be more social and environmental when I furthered my studies, and then realizing that I landed in the most forward planning economic division of the not knowing that, right?
Yeah.
And then the other clarity was to really appreciate the international non-profit world and understanding that they really work very hard and they really get nothing done because the power lies in the hands of governments with rich people that they always have to wine and dine for donation. Big companies that are fluid across borders. So and you can see their dilemma. And you could understand that. And so after 3 years, what I found myself in was a deeper appreciation of the public service, very deep appreciation of the non-profit world, but not knowing where I was in all this.
Where do you fit in all this?
And I was still just chugging along because the Singapore government is a beautiful employer that gives you a lot of joy and benefits and all that. So you could just easily ride out your life, in the Singapore government. But then there I was riding along, and then one day I was asked to be promoted. I was given a promotion. I was offered a promotion, but that promotion entailed completely changing where I was. So I was asked to go to Europe to head the Europe office for 3 years, and I was asked to. So in doing so, I'll have to leave, my family, Singapore, tie myself down in Europe for 3 years. Huge pay promotion.
Which part of Europe is this?
London, but in charge of Western Europe.
Right.
And then I was asked to, but also become a Singapore citizen, because I then had to, when you represent the country, you have to,
of course,
become a Singapore citizen. So there were a few things that were asked, conditional upon with my promotion.
Got it.
But then I found myself completely unexcited.
Was that? I'm curious. Was that the moment that you woke up from the Matrix?
Well, was it the moment I woke up? Well, I woke up from. I realized how I was surprised that what I was chasing after, suddenly I was now unexcited about.
Right.
So I don't know whether you call it wake up from the Matrix, but it was more like, wow, after all these years, working so hard, falling, I was severely overweight, working ungodly hours, and then here I was now given that promotion that everybody, including myself, was fighting for, and I was unable to receive it with joy. And so when it was asked of me, I was like, wow. I remember telling my boss that I don't know why I am not excited.
This was like on the spot, you told him?
I told him, I said, I'm not excited, I don't know why. And then he looked at me and he's like, what do you mean you're not excited? You know how hard we fought for this, for you. And then I was like, man, I really don't know why. And so that was the moment. I think that was the opening. That was the real opening for me. And I realized then I realized that, shit man, I need to do something about it. And so I asked for some time. And at that time, the only way I could figure out, I felt that I could find some sort of answer was to read. So I asked for some time off. I said, give me a week to decide. And then I went to bookstores, started reading self-help books. Dalai
That's a good
Lama.
tip, by the way.
Okay, so I went to the self-help section, the secular section. Then it didn't really work. So I went to the spiritual section. In Kinokuniya in Singapore, you have so I went from Henry Newen, Thomas Merton to the Islamic Tariq Ramadans to the Dalai Lama to just like somebody give me a hint, what's happening here? Why am I physically not well, mentally stressed, and then not accepting what I chase after?
Right.
And so that was my moment, I guess. So I had no idea what to do. So then, but all I knew was I didn't want to do mainstream economic development. That didn't sit well with me. Somehow at that moment in my life, against the wishes of other people who go to Singapore to work, the Singapore citizenship didn't sit well with me too.
Right.
Whereas a lot of my friends already took up the citizenship, it was natural for them. But for me, it was like, wow, suddenly giving up Malaysian citizenship just didn't sit well with me. And I knew much later on that it was because of my family. And so there I was unraveling. and
Rabbit hole, man.
rabbit hole, and then I decided to reject that promotion for still reasons I don't know. And my boss was very, very, very empathetic, and he was like, maybe you just love the non-profit work, so just stay on for a while longer, but you can't stay on because you have to move right up. And you're mid-career hire, you have to move, you are high potential, you can, we see you going places, but you can't just stick around doing this non-profit stuff, So I bought some time, and then, well, I guess I should continue lah. But the moment of waking up for me was when I went back for the third time to Kinokuniya. And I
Mr. Will Chua. We'll come back to this.
And this
to the spiritual.
and I remember very clearly, bout by bout here, what happened. So I had just read a book by the Dalai Lama called Towards a Kinship of All Faiths, which, again, until this morning, I didn't know why. I was attracted to interfaith dialogue. So that title attracted me. I read it. It sort of gave me some massage, I guess, intellectual massage, but it didn't really do much inside. So I decided I would go back and I would look for another book, whether it's Dalai Lama or something else. And I was staring at the shelf, and I kid you not, some random uncle poked me behind. I thought he was just want to get through, or something. And then I turned around, and there he was, and he said, "You young people always look at the top shelf, lazy. So whatever they put in front of your eyes, you all just look. You should look at the bottom shelf. Look at the left shelf. Look at the right shelf. You look at the top shelf. So all the best-selling books are all on the top shelf." He complained to me like that, and then I was like, "Who in the world are you?" And then he's like, "Look at the bottom shelf. Try other books." Then he walked away. and in that moment,
I have to find the uncle.
I had no idea who he was. I don't even know whether he exists.
Right. Right.
I might have been on
alien,
some.
right?
I might have been on some substance or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, it could be the future you.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the podcast has just taken a very dark turn.
Goosebumps. Wow, he didn't look like me, but
I don't want it to look like you.
so I remember I looked down, and the Dalai Lama is D, so it's always at the top shelf, right? And I looked down, and there it was, another 30 books by the same author. And this time, so it stood out, right? Because when you look down, you see like the same name across the whole shelf. And it was a guy called Thich Nhat Hanh. And
he's not just a guy, by the way.
Yeah, so I was like, who is this guy? So hard to spell, right? Thich Nhat Hanh. I mean, he has like 5.
I don't even know how to say it right at that time, right?
Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah, 5 H's in his name, and or equal number of books with the Dalai Lama, like, And this uncle just pointed me downwards, so I googled him, and I guess everybody can Google him. So you can Google him and you can see who he is. And but what really caught my attention was he was firstly he was a peace activist, and then he was kicked out of his country, which really appealed to me. and then he became friends with Martin Luther King Jr., and which has the interfaith thing, which really appealed to me. And then he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, which really appealed to me because that's what I wanted to do, right? The whole social thing. And then so there he was, this Zen teacher with 50 books, and then I found a blog that says top 7 spiritual leaders of all time. One was like Oprah Winfrey, 2 Dalai Lama, and then there he was at number 4, I think Eckhart Tolle, and then Henry Newman, and then there he was up there, and I was like, and I had never heard of him in my life. And then they recommended one of his books, and so I think it was called The Miracle of Mindfulness. The Miracle of Mindfulness. I bought that book, and then another blog recommended this book called The Heart of Buddha's Teaching, which is like basically the summary. It's like his summary of all the Buddha's teaching.
The essence.
Essence. And the economic development officer in me. That is the most efficient book, right? One shot. And I remember I took the book, right?
Once.
Yeah, I remember I took the book, right? And this book is so economically organized. Its chapter is like this. It's like the 2 truths, the 3 seals, the 4 immeasurables, the 5 powers, the 6 parameters, the 7 awakenings, the 8 noble paths. I was like, wow, this is great. It's like one shot, no, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So those are the 2 books I bought. So I bought those 2 books and I went back and I couldn't put it down. I couldn't put them down. The Miracle of Mindfulness, I read from the start to the end. I didn't sleep. And I went to the office the next day. I found, somehow when my boss was around, I was like, okay, I need to go and learn how to meditate. Then he looks at me, he's like, ooh, that's not something that we do. And then I was like, yeah, I need to learn how to meditate. I think there's something there. I read this book, I cannot stop putting it down. You know, and then so that's where I started this. So all I knew was his books made a lot of sense. It's about practice, it's not about dogma, and it's about living in the present moment and about transforming your own suffering and learning how to generate joy from inside. So a lot of these very practical stuff. And I Googled again. I found there was a group of volunteers that met once a month in Singapore in this tradition in Plum Village, which is Thich Nhat Hanh's tradition. So that Sunday itself, after I read the book, it was the once a month meeting. So I went and we practiced for a day together. Silent eating, silent meal, silent sitting. I watched the video of his for the first time, and then we did sharing, which is a little bit like sharing circle, like Alcoholics Anonymous. Hi, I'm Will and I'm suffering. I don't know why I don't want my promotion, And then somebody else will be like, hi, I'm going through a divorce or something like that. So we did that, and I came out of that. I remember I went to the organizer, who was a very tiny Vietnamese lady, Huang, and I said, I can't wait another month. Like, how can I get more of this stuff? Then she looked at me and she's like, oh, well, we only meet once a month, so if you want, you have to join a retreat. I said, what's a retreat? It's like, you go to a place and you practice for a week or 2, I was like, that's great. So I Googled it and I found that there was a German retreat in June of 2013. So which was a few months from where I was. And then I went back to my boss and I said, I need 30 days off.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's what happened to me. So from then the story is I went to the retreat and it was 30 days, 1,000 people from all over the world.
Which part of Germany is this?
It was in a place called Waldbro. It's about it's close to Cologne.
Okay.
South of Cologne. Basically, they took an ex-Nazi mental hospital that nobody wanted to buy, and they bought it and they transformed it into a practice center.
Nice.
For inclusive. So when I was there, I remember I sat in a circle of young people under 35. I was 34 or 35, and I had a Jewish rabbi, a gay Catholic man, a young pastor to be a city church pastor, of course Buddhist. I had a Muslim monk, Buddhist monk holding a Quran, all in my circle. And it was, and for the first time I felt, this is...
interfaith maximum, man.
Hashtag interfaith maximum.
This is
Maybe somewhere there was a secret Satanist who didn't dare to reveal himself,
It's like first time I belonged,
Yeah.
I find there are crazier people than me, You know what I mean? That kind of feeling. And then you practice together. You do nothing but breathe and smile for 15 days. I slept under a tent for the first time in my life. I woke up and it was under an apple tree, and there it was, fresh apples on the floor, and I could just eat it like that. And then I walk into the forest and I see deers, and we were drinking water from a stream.
It's like heaven, man.
It was just ridiculous. And then it was a vegetarian retreat. I think it was a vegetarian, they're not vegan. But when I came out of the retreat, so when I went in, I bought 12 Ritter bars, like chocolate bars, because I love chocolate, and I know it was going to be a vegetarian retreat. So I had to preempt, EDB, right? So I bought a whole chunk of chocolate, and I ate one out of the 12 for the whole 13 days. I didn't even eat the rest, and I gave it away. And so all I can say is that those 15 days, or I can't remember how many days I was there, and then I stayed on a bit, so that's why I took 30 days off. That just completely flipped my perspective of life. And I came back, and when my boss saw my face, he said, "You're going to quit." I didn't say, I didn't say I was going to quit. He said I was going to quit.
Right.
I was like, why you say that? And he's like, I mean, you look different, man. and funnily enough, the end of 2013, when two things happened. One was I had the yearly medical checkup, and everything went from red to black.
Wow.
So I lost 6 kilos, no more high cholesterol, no fatty liver, no high blood pressure, no high uric acid. All of that was red the year before. So that was really wonderful. I still have the 2 medical reports. And then the second thing that happened was I was asked, he offered me another promotion because we had our yearly performance appraisal, and I did better. So the 360-degree review thing, showed that I became a better manager. Instead, even though I was more chill, and I was listening more, and all these positive comments, and so they offered me another promotion because I did better than before. And so this time he said, I know you want to be close to your family, so why don't you just head Southeast Asia and be based out of Singapore? And at that time I knew I had to quit because that was not my path anymore.
Right.
And I don't know what my path was, but it was definitely not that. Even though it was a beautiful, I love the Singapore government to death, but I knew it wasn't my path. And at that time I knew I had to quit because I wanted to do 3 retreats in 2014, and that would take 65 days. and I knew that I didn't have the leave to take 65 days. And so I told my boss the only simple reason is because I have to do these retreats, and I knew that I have to do these retreats. Nothing else mattered more than these retreats. And so he said, I can't stop you lah, And then he said, the only thing I can do for you is I get you approval for no pay leave. So I'll give you a year to see whether you want to come back. And I was so touched by him. And partly also was because at that time we had become friends. He was going through a lot of personal issues in his life. And
this
for
is
some
a Malaysian boss, is it? Or
Singaporean. Yeah, Singaporean. But and for some reason, maybe because of newfound peace, you listen more and then you become friends. So he wasn't my boss anymore, he was my friend. So he was like, I'll get you a year's no pay leave, which I didn't want because I thought that would just leave things hanging. But he insisted. I was very touched. He gave it to me. He got it approved by the board, and he gave it to me, and it saved my life because I forgot that I had to break the news to my mother. The matriarchal one. So I went back home to Johor Bahru,
the biggest dragon of all.
and I told my mother, Mom, I'm gonna quit my job and go for retreats next year because this is really wonderful. And then she looked at me. She basically yelled at me. She's like, "Well, allow it, you go from construction, you got your scholarship, you go to a job that is secure, well-paying. I don't see you a lot because you're so busy, but it's such a great job. Then now you're quitting again. Like, what the hell is happening, right?" And so in that moment, I remember the letter that I got from my boss. I took it out and I placed it on the table. I said, "Mom, don't worry. At the end of the year, I still have my job." And then she looked at the letter, she read it briefly, and then she said, "You can do whatever you want."
Just do whatever you want.
Just do whatever you want. So that saved my life. That was my passport to my sabbatical.
Right.
So in 2014, I took a sabbatical.
Okay. I've got that's so fascinating. I've got probably is something which I need to ask you. I mean, it's more to help the audience who is going through somewhat a similar path as well, or a similar crossroad, where on one side of things is that they know that it would be a very safe path, right? Like at that point in time that you had a promotion and you knew that and you don't hate the job, right? You love the job, right? But it's the other side of things which is also calling you, which is a much louder calling in that sense, right? What kind of advice would you give to somebody who is in that kind of crossroad as well, right? Where they know that if they continue, they will have a good life in that sense.
Comfortable life.
Comfortable life, no? But there is a wholly internal dissatisfaction inside as well. What kind of advice would you give to such people?
Well, I never really thought about advice, but my experience is, I would say, if you don't feel slightly, I would spiritually dissatisfied, you would have just gone on. So if you are at the moment where you are feeling like this is a good, comfortable path, but there is a but. That means there is something deeper that you have to resolve, or you have to go on a journey on. And so if you are, but if you don't have that but, you don't even have to need any advice. You just keep going, right? I mean, that's where you are supposed to be at that moment. But if that but comes up, then you have to start listening to it. And the first thing that comes to my mind when you have, in terms of listening to that but and to discover that but, is to find time and space. Simple as that. So if you don't have time and if you don't have space to listen to it, then you just will cover it up, or you just let other things distract you away from it. So for me, I didn't deliberately find time and space, but time and space came. So I went for a retreat, and there it was 12 days of self-contemplation, and a lot of things came up for me, things like my father's early death. So my father died when I was 20. That came up. A lot of love, a lot of guilt about not living up to the expectations of people who gave me a lot of love, like our grandma, father, mother, friends, people who basically gave us a lot, but we felt there was this sense of self-criticism, like I never lived up to that love, right? So this sense of I'm not good enough, or this sense of like I should have treated him or her better when they were alive, or I should treat people better now, so that I can compensate for the taking them for granted. So a lot of things like that came up, but that's for me. But for everybody is different, right? And so having that time and space for this to surface would be most important. So related to that would be simplifying your life. So one thing that came out, one thing that I did naturally immediately was I stopped buying anything material. So I was on the verge of buying a house in Singapore. I stopped that. I moved out. I went back and lived with my mum. I didn't buy the car that I wanted to buy in Singapore. Even though I could afford it at that time easily, and I, just simplified my life. And with that simplification comes a lot of time and space and flexibility. Like I can now I can drive to Bangkok and back because I don't need to take leave, right? So
for audience who just listen to that happened actually.
And last year Adrian and I spent a month in the mountains in Thailand, hiking. For me the important thing is when you hear that but, is to remember that I have to listen to it to see where it goes, and to do that I have to simplify my life and find time and space. And then with the time and space, the second thing that again happened to me without pursuing, which I feel is now important, is then you have to find a practice, a way of listening, because we are not used to listening to our hearts. We are not used to facing our emotions when they come up. So we used to be able to do it. I think our ancestors were pretty good at it. But we go to the mountains, we listen to people around a fire and all that. Or my grandfather go kopitiam, But we don't have that muscle. And so finding a practice that helps you listen to yourself and take care of yourself is important. And there's so many out there now. Whatever works for you, whether it's something grounded in movement like yoga or church or cell groups or meditation or going to a temple or whatever it is, like Hindu temple have their own way, they have their, so whatever it is, find a practice that you resonate with that can help you face yourself and take care of yourself.
I mean, also things like art forms, right?
Art,
Beautiful.
Beautiful. Music.
Some kind of sport as well, right? Things that some kind of craft, right? Things
Like-
that occupy you in a way that is fulfilling spiritually and emotionally, right?
Yeah, make you present and demands you to face yourself. You know, that gentle demand, right? And so like music, like for example, I listen to a Deaf Cat for Cutie song. It brings me, I listen to Eddie Vedder. Eddie Vedder brings me back, or singing. Singing helps. So that practice. So I would say simplify, practice, and then again, what happened to me was there was a little community of support.
Right.
So it's always easier to be a drop of water flowing with a river than if you are just a drop of water trying to figure out how to get to the sea or become a cloud or something.
So interesting.
Yeah. So this whole so what happened to me was I just stumbled into 1,000 people in a and breathing in and breathing out, facing their suffering, sharing the stuff that they have gone through, and then crying, transforming, whatever. I stumbled into that, and so, but then if you are not, I guess, present, the stumbling doesn't happen, because you don't, when you are sort of fixated on walking somewhere, you don't stumble into another path, or you don't stumble into a community. You are just waiting from A and trying to get to B, and so along the way you don't see what's along the way. But when you're you have the time, you have the space, and you have a practice, suddenly you see like, wait, that looks interesting. Or somebody comes along and wow, this person is different from me. There's something I can learn, and I guess that's what happened. I stumbled into these three things, and so what came out of it was I realized I have a volition and aspiration that is deeper than material comfort, and it unraveled and unraveled and unraveled, and it's very clear to me now. It's got to do with love. It's got to do with having received so much and now having to give, the generosity, that somehow my life, people have been very generous to me, and so I have to do work and I have to live my life. My livelihood has to be around generosity. So that came out very strongly for me, and whatever I'm doing now, I hope embodies that, whatever I do, And then the other thing that came up for me was that is something to do with nature, that I feel very strongly about the love for nature, and that came up for me, and I know that I need to be in a livelihood that enables me to take my little role in nature and to play it well, rather than treat nature out as something outside of me. And so that's why I'm growing food. I'm growing food now. So food, and then service, generosity and service, and so so now I'm and I know that I make 5% of what I used to make, but that but in I'm living that but. I'm living that but, and it's unraveling, continuing to grow and change and shift. But I'm answering that but rather than just sort of riding that normal path that society, I guess, rewards me for.
Just so much to unpack. We can go on for hours. I think, but we have to kind of like come to an end, at least for part one of 7,000
hours. And he was just Will was just hinting at the topic which we haven't even started talking about, which is the part about growing food and the way he grows it at his farm called FOLO, FOLO, which is short for Feed Our Loved Ones, which is based in Johor. And how they farm is like this. There's another like
freaking epic, amazing story about how that came along and
Yeah.
what it has become, so but that has to be another episode, man. We can't do it justice
Definitely.
in the next 10 minutes.
Because there's just so much that
Yeah.
even this episode that I'm learning, I'm writing notes and so on. So the year now is 2019. How have you grown spiritually? I mean, since that you left the EDP?
How have I grown spiritually? Well, there is the form, and then there is, I guess, the formless. In form, in 2012, I was alone. I was fat and unhealthy and stressed and maybe slightly depressed, I don't know. Now I'm part of quite a thriving community of practice. We in Singapore. I travel every week to Singapore and we practice mindfulness. So it's a very, very beautiful community that gathers every week. And I'm considered now like a senior member, 6 years on. I have a code of practice that I live by. It's called the 14 mindfulness trainings. It's like the 14 code of living happily. And I try to practice living by this code, and it's not coerced, wasn't forced on me.
Right.
Something that I believe in. And every year I spend at least a month or two in retreat, and that helps with the continuing with the bud.
Yep.
And now I'm beginning to reach the stage where I am sort of mentoring newer people who are just discovering like what they want to do with their lives, trying to deal with their suffering and trying to find joy in their lives and meaning. So I'm sort of informed that's what's happening. I guess formlessly, I feel that more and more I feel more, I think the word is inner strength, where now I feel like there's a little bit more confidence that I have in dealing with myself. When you find that self-criticism, that the ego, that expectation you have of yourself, or when you face your closest family and loved ones that trigger you a lot,
and the ones who know where your buttons are.
Yes, and I start realize I do have a deeper sense of confidence that I can face it with more space and more love. I do feel like in the last 6 years our family, our relationships have been getting deeper and better. Not perfect, nothing is perfect, but I do feel a sense of closeness. Also a factor of time and space. Now I see my mom every day. I see my relatives much more than before, and I do feel that I'm a little bit more getting more and more ready for the big uncertainties, the big ones, like things like illness, the death of your parent, your own death,
the
climate crisis, and I feel much more sensitive, and yet I know that there's something that can help me prepare for that, and to be able to be peaceful with all this is something very important, and rather than avoiding it until it happens, to sort of know that I'm trying to be there. Right? So I think it's hard to use words to describe the formlessness, but the sense of, I guess there's some maturity. There's some maturity, and generally I'm happier, Generally I enjoy whatever I'm doing, and just sort of
Man, I didn't expect that at all. That was deep. That was good. So in closing, one of our favorite questions to ask is actually, what do you learn about yourself in the last
hour?
an hour or half an hour? What do you learn about yourself
from this conversation.
What did you discover? Anything new? Any new insights to discover by yourself today?
Phew, okay. It's the first time I'm sharing this in front of a mic. I do feel like there's clarity, when you say something. I like this blog thing because you don't really have an audience. You only have a mic and two friends. So I guess the biggest thing I've learned is sharing gives you more clarity and gives you more. When you are, the feeling of being heard is nice lah, and the feeling of knowing that I really love this kind of conversations where it's very authentic and then at the end of it now I just feel like, oh, I've been heard, and whoever hears this is something true, and from my perspective it might not be true from any perspective, and it reinforces the path lah, for me.
Right.
Yeah. So I think that's the big. Yeah, sharing is good lah.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Will.
So we're closing this.
Yeah.
But why? How are we going to finish 7,000 hours?
It's really to do lunch.
Lunch, and Carlson has a marathon to do tomorrow. Half marathon. Half. Yeah. Well. Anything more than 2 is a marathon for me lah. More than 2 km. So thanks for listening in today. That has been the Stories We Tell Ourselves podcast. We are on all the major platforms and working on more major platforms.
Yes.
So we're probably going to be on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher. Google is not available in Malaysia yet, but someday will be. We're on YouTube. So like, subscribe, leave us a comment, tell us what you think, tell us what you want to hear. Tell us if you have an interesting person we can talk to as well. But till then, thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you. Bye.